what the Democrats, I think, have done wrong, and then kind of what I see happening. And so, you know, it's my opinion, it's from nowhere, it's probably wrong. But I mean, so far I've not swayed anybody on anything. In 2000, you know, a couple months ago, you know, the Democrats got smashed. I think they ran an absolutely miserable campaign. I thought their marketing was horrible. They ran like chickens from a great story that they had. They let the Republicans somehow convince not just the voter, but the Democrats. I mean, that was the worst part of the Republicans' marketing plan. They convinced the Democrats that the country was in terrible shape and that Obama was the worst candidate to have, the worst president to have on the ticket with them, which was insane. Because if you look at the Obama record, when he became president, stock market was 6,500, 7,000. Today it's 18,000. It's almost triple, you know. And yet we say the economy's doing very badly. Unemployment, when in January 2001, and I know it's terrible to point back to, you know, to President Bush, but the unemployment rate was 6.2%, and 6 million people were unemployed. When he left office, 12 million people were unemployed. The unemployment rate was 7.8%. In the next 3 months, it ran up to 10%. You know, as the ball rolled down the hill. By October of 2009, when Obama had been in office for 8 months, the unemployment rate hit 10%. Today, there are 15 million people were unemployed. 15.3. Those 300,000 people probably care. Today, there are about 8.5 million people unemployed. The unemployment rate is 5.5%. We didn't tell that story. Deficits. Inflation adjusted, when Reagan became president, the deficit was about 200 billion. Inflation adjusted, ran up to 500 billion. During his presidency, by the time he left office, it was about 300. George H.W. Bush, you know, went from about 300 to 400. Clinton walked into office with a $400 billion deficit, walked out with a $200 billion surplus. George W. Bush walks into office with a $200 billion surplus. His last year in office, the surplus was $1.6 trillion that somehow got pasted onto Obama. George W. Bush's last budget that he submitted to Congress for the 2009 fiscal year was $1.6 trillion. The Democrats allowed Obama to have that pasted on his back and say, shoot him. And everybody shot him. Today, the deficit is about under $500 billion. It's 1/3 of what it was when he took over. I don't get it why Democrats can't tell a good story when you have a good story. If you have a 3-year-old child, you read to them before they go to bed at night, read them a happy story. You don't read them about people, how many people got killed or shot, or who was robbed, or the grandma died, or you don't tell them that. You tell them a happy story, you know, the Goldilocks story, or, you know, somebody getting married and living happily ever after, you know, that kind of thing. But, you know, the Democrats allow a terrible story to be painted as a bad story. Obamacare. You know, the end of the story, and I'll come back to Obamacare in a minute, but the end of the story, my theory of Obamacare is that, you know, since Obamacare passed, Republicans have voted once a month, over 50 times, to repeal it. They haven't done it now. Now, why haven't they voted to repeal it now that they're in control of Congress? You know, it get vetoed, but, you know, why? I mean, where is it now? Now, I don't think Obamacare is the greatest, you know, plan of all, but you got to remember where it came from. Obama's original plan was to put everybody under a Medicare-style system. About half the country's under government-paid health care anyway. Anybody in Social Security or, you know, Medicare, Medicaid, disability, whatever, VA hospital, is under a crazy system. I was in the healthcare business, and one thing that, a nasty little secret that Larry and I have worked on for the last 5 years is selling drugs that the federal government negotiates a price that's about a 50% discount. We talk about drugs cost of in Canada or Germany or Japan or wherever, and what we pay compared to them, but less than 50% of us pay full price for the drugs. About half of America pays about half price for drugs, but we don't know that. It's really kind of silent. And so what happened is when the Clinton care was proposed in 1994, the Republicans, of course, beat it up with Harry Louise, and they came out with this great plan that would be driven by the insurance companies and by the private markets and blah, blah, blah. And of course, nothing happened when Obama suggested that we come out with a Medicare-style plan for the entire country. Of course, Republicans went up in arms, so he says, okay, I tell you what, I got a great idea. Here, let's use your plan. And so they pulled out the plan. You know, Obamacare was basically a copy of the Heritage Foundation, a very right-wing, you know, think tank, that this was their plan. And so now they hate their own plan, and we forget that, and the public doesn't know that. I mean, it was there. And so, you know, it's sort of like, and we gave the healthcare plan to the insurance companies, like giving the Fox control, you know, of the proverbial hen house. I was sitting in Salisbury at a meeting. I talked to, I don't want to say who it is, a public official here, an elected official in Salisbury, who told me that she had read all 2,700 pages of Obamacare, and it was terrible. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know, I wrote these things. I worked on the Hill for 3 years. Nobody sits down and reads a law. It doesn't read like a novel. It reads like, go to, you know, Title 26, you know, Section 4, Paragraph 3.2a, and change the word 8 to 7. You know, or take this phrase out, or add this phrase in. That's the way a statute reads. I mean, they're very, you know, you don't read them. They don't read a story. They're not logical just to read them, because you other have to sit there with the United States Code in front of you and kind of constantly cross-reference it. I wrote statutes, and the way you do it is you come up with your idea, and then you hand it to the legislative drafting committee, which is nonpartisan, and they write it, and then they give it to you, and then you check it and make sure it kind of fits. I mean, that's the way it is. So I'm sitting with this official at an explanation of Obamacare about a year and a half ago, and this person from Blue Cross Blue Shield is talking about Medicaid expansion. You know, Medicaid expansion nobody understands, but we see it as this demon. And in case you probably all know how Medicaid expansion works, but just in case you don't, I'm going to tell you. Obamacare was intended to cover anybody whose income was between 100 and 400% of the federal poverty level. Federal poverty level this year is $11,670. So if you make over $11,670 and you're not married, up to whatever 4 times that is, or if you're married and have kids, it goes up to about between $40,000 and $90,000. Then you get some assistance from the government in paying your premium. Well, what happens if you make under $11,670? Then the theory of Obamacare was, well, then you will qualify and get health care through the Medicaid system. And what Medicaid expansion was intended to do was for the federal government to give the states the money, 100% of the money, to pay the additional Medicaid costs that they would incur. Now, the way Medicaid works, every state had Medicaid is shared cost between the state and between the federal government based upon the population's income and the number. And so you have some states like California and New York that the federal government may contribute 20 or 30% of the cost, and you have 4 states like Alabama and Mississippi where the federal government may contribute 70% of the cost because they've got more people and their income's lower. And they don't inflation adjust what federal poverty level means, whether you live in California or whether you live in Mississippi. So the theory was the federal government would pay that bill. 23 states, the entire South included, said, we don't want the money. And of course, then they ran into budget deficits and started cutting, you know, the guts out of education and infrastructure. I thought it was really cool. I lived near Catawba College, and that bridge collapsed. I thought, that's kind of cool, you know, and then they fixed it. But before they fixed it, I lived on a cul-de-sac at Catawba College, which was just great. wanted them to leave it broken. But the 23 poor states are the ones who haven't taken Medicaid expansion. So if you make under $11,670, you don't get health care. Now, I'm involved in a situation right now with a person who last year made 2013 made $16,000. They qualified for Obamacare. Their premium was about $300. They got a $200 discount, paid $100 a month, had to go to the hospital this year, probably cost $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Well, in 2014, guess what? That person only made $8,000. So when the tax return is filed next in 2 months, they're going to owe back that $2,400. They're going to have the IRS on their back for this $2,400 because the state involved doesn't have Medicaid expansion. Now, the other thing that's going to happen is coming right down the pipe right now is the next attack on Obamacare, which is going to happen this spring, is going to be some serious stuff.
Subsidy.
And what's happened is here's the essence of that argument, which is that the way it works is this tax credit or subsidy, whatever you want to call it, that the government gives you back, the way it works is the insurance company gives you a break on that policy, that $300 policy for that person making $16,000 a year. They got $200 back. They only pay the government, they only pay Blue Cross, in this case, $100 a month. The federal government reimburses that Blue Cross that $200. Now, the $200 discount comes out of the tax code. The tax code is sort of sacrosanct from Obamacare attack. But the federal government cutting that check to Blue Cross Blue Shield has to have an appropriation, is the argument. And Congress has never allowed, even though Congress is paying Blue Cross Blue Shield that money, Congress has never authorized the actual payment of those dollars, and that's not part of the tax code. And so the argument that's coming up in front of the Supreme Court this spring is that, wait a minute, we're not allowed to pay the insurance companies back for the discounts that they're providing to people that are between 100 and 400% of the poverty level. So you know what that's going to mean? You go to Blue Cross Blue Shield and said, whoops, you accidentally dished out $30 billion. You owe it back to the federal government. And what's Blue Cross going to do? They're going to go cut a deal with the federal government to not have to pay it back because they thought that it was a good check when the government wrote it. But what do they do to all the people that are getting a subsidy? They're going to say, this deal's over. We can't do this if we're not going to get the money back. I mean, it's a kind of a backdoor way to kill all of Obamacare. There are 9 or 10 million people covered that didn't have insurance before. Every child under 26 whose parent has insurance, you know the drill. You know, pre-existing conditions aren't covered. I have bad hips. I've also got another medical condition. I've been uninsurable for the last 10 years. And, you know, I could buy insurance under Obamacare. Now, of course, I'm on Medicare, which doesn't care about my pre-existing conditions, but that's what allowed me, but for 10 years, I've been uninsurable. I haven't been able to buy it. I tell my students when I was a college professor, I said, when you go buy insurance, you here's the bet. You say, I bet I'm going to die this year. If you buy life insurance, the insurance company says, I bet you don't. And then one year you go to renew your life insurance company because they don't want to pay. They don't want you to die that year. Then you go one year and you say, I bet I'm going to die this year. And they say, you know, you're right. We agree. We think you are. We're not going to sell you insurance. And that's what happened to me with health care. You know, I went to my insurance company every year and said, you know, I've got this disease and I've got these hips and I think it's going to cost me, you know, $1,000 a month for one of my drugs, and I'm going to have to go to this doctor, and you know, and I've got to take care of these hips, and I've got this disease that requires me to have a colonoscopy every year, which is real fun, and I think I'm going to consume about $20,000 of health care this year. I'd like to buy an insurance policy, and the insurance company says, yeah, you're right, you're going to consume a lot of health care. We don't want to cover you. You just, you know, sorry. That means I win the bet. I raise the bet, they say, thank you, you're right, we agree with you. Inflation, since Obamacare was instituted, it's been 1 year. 1 year. In that 1 year, the inflation in healthcare costs is the lowest it's been since 1960. Think of that. Since 1960, you know, unbelievable. 55 years is the lowest inflation. Then they didn't keep track of healthcare inflation because it didn't matter. Another key rule of Obamacare is that the insurance companies, I got a letter this year from my insurance company that said, you know what, here's a check. They wrote me a check, the insurance company. I was covered under my wife's insurance policy, and we got a check. And the check wasn't much, it was, you know, $143, something crazy. But they said, under Obamacare, you know, we're required to pay out 85% of benefits, 85% of premiums in benefits. And because some insurance companies were paying out 30 and 40%, they were keeping 70%, 60% for quote overhead, you know, and whatever, you know, profits. And so my insurance company, Blue Cross Blue Shield in Northern Virginia, hadn't paid out 85% benefits. They'd only paid out 84% benefits. So guess what the law required them to do? They had to give the consumer back that money. So we got a check for $143 or something like that, which is kind of crazy. I was CFO of a bank once upon a time, went to the bank, they raised our premiums about 20%. I went to them and said, why? And they said, that's the rules. I said, well, we had spent $40,000 a year on that year in premiums. I said, well, how much did you pay out? And they said, well, you had claims of $20,000 and we covered 10 of it. I said, so we paid you 40. The doctors asked you for 20. You gave them 10. So you paid out 25%. They, yep. Why did you raise our rates 20%? They said, that's just what the rating agency did. I changed insurance companies for a whole company, and that was an experience. So, just now, here's the go figure with Obamacare. More insurance companies have signed up to provide coverage for people who are under Obamacare. In 2015, the enrollment closes February 15th. It's been open for 3 or 4 months this year than they did last year. Remember in 2013, they said nobody's going to sign up, and then you had these companies signing up. Now you have, you know, about a 30 to 40% increase in the number of insurance companies that want to get into the game. Go figure that out. Well, if it's so bad, why didn't all the insurance companies quit? Why are they wanting in? I don't get it. Okay.
Are the insurance companies fighting for Obamacare?
Yeah, because wouldn't you?
Well, I would. I want to know if they are.
Oh yeah, because they got 10 million new customers.
Yeah.
The guaranteed payment. That's a pretty good deal, huh?
Yeah.
This was a plan written by them for them. And they supported Obamacare, even though all the people giving the money opposed it. Go figure that.
I would think more companies are coming because the demographics of the population insured are better known. And so they know what their risk is better now that they've seen the end of the first year, who's in the pool.
Actually, the pool is bad, because the people coming into the pool are, I hate to say it because I'm too old, but your age, not the 28-year-olds that they want.
Well, but they still know the risk.
They know,
The
well,
rates are.
they knew the risk then, they knew the risk. I mean, you got 200 million people with insurance. The pool in the United States is so big, they know it. I think they're scared of what Congress was gonna do. Notice Congress has zipped its lips now about repealing it. Now, I think what the Republicans are great at, whereas the Democrats are scared of what the Republicans feed them, I think the Republicans are great at fictionalizing reality.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
You know, they said that stimulus spending isn't going to work. Well, we only got about $1.5 trillion in stimulus spending, but you know what? If you look at every economy on the face of the earth, every single one, who suffered the least of this recession? The United States. Who caused this recession? The United States. It's our banking system and our banking laws that caused it. We drug the whole world down with us, but, you know, we're the only country on the face of the earth it actually did some stimulus, and all the economists said it wasn't enough. But what we did help. It saved General Motors. Would we be better off without GM, just for example? I think we would not be better off without GM. The Republicans said, you remember we walked to the brink of not funding the government, said we need to cut the deficits. Of course, these were recession-driven deficits. Which countries cut deficits? I mean, it's cut spending instead of increased spending. Every one of them have been in at least 2 recessions. Some of them are going into the 3rd. Yet every country in the world that cuts spending, is still looking at 20% unemployment rates. Everyone. Even some of the countries that had no stimulus spending, are looking at 10 to 12% unemployment rates. France, Germany, sucking wind. China's growth rate's half, what it was. So Republicans say stimulus spending's bad, it worked. They're saying cut spending. If we don't cut spending, we're going to go in the tank. We didn't cut spending, yet we're the only one who didn't go in the tank. They said tax cuts, mantra, like, being in yoga, and tax cuts. Tax cuts are the only way out. It didn't work with anybody. It hasn't worked with, it didn't work with Bush. Bush walked in with this, like I said, with this $200 billion deficit, cut taxes, walks out with a $200 billion surplus, walks out with a $1.8 trillion, $1.6 trillion surplus. Tax cuts don't work.
Deficit.
At the state level.
State level,
Even at the
same
state
thing.
level, we're suffering a deficit because of tax cuts.
They said Obamacare was going to collapse. It didn't. They voted to repeal it every month for 4 years until this month. But let me tell you, watch out. Watch out. Let me tell you what's coming down the pipe. And this is scary. Smart, but scary, because I worked on the Hill and I dealt with this issue, which is a thing called dynamic scoring. What dynamic scoring is when you propose a bill in Congress and it's going to cost money, you have to have it scored, which means how much is this going to cost? And so what they do is, we have right now a rule called static scoring, which is pretty stupid, but nonetheless it is the rule. What static scoring says is that if you're going to raise the tax rate, let's say we cut the tax rate 1%, they say how much less tax are you going to collect? Or if you can spend $1 million on a bridge, that counts as negative, okay? Because it's just the spending. You don't look at what the economic impact of that spending is. Dynamic scoring is saying what is the economic impact of that. So you build a bridge and you say, well, it's going to put people to work, and those people are going to buy groceries and they're going to buy a car and stuff like that. We don't do that. That's coming down the pipe right now because the Republicans want it and they control both houses and they're going to get it. But you know what's going to happen? There are double-edged swords out there everywhere. What's going to happen is every bill they propose is going to, their tax cut bills, they're going to say, oh, if we cut taxes, that means businessmen are going to invest more and that's going to create new jobs. They're going to use dynamic scoring, to jack up what they want. Now, do you think they're going to look at dynamic scoring for minimum wage?
Nope.
No. They wouldn't even propose a minimum adjustment to the minimum wage, because if you do the dynamic scoring on that you raise the minimum wage $2 an hour, every single one of those dollars is going straight to the economy tomorrow. If they give me, I had a good year last year, but if they give me, a $10,000 tax cut, am I going to go hire somebody? No.
Nope.
I'm going to put it in the bank. And so this dynamic scoring is going to have the same effect that the George Bush tax cuts had, which is he had a $200 billion surplus, and he says we're going to cut taxes, and the surplus is going to get bigger. And it didn't get bigger because it didn't stimulate enough growth for bigger. So it's going to lead to bigger deficits. They're going to use trickle down to and dynamic scoring to justify everything except minimum wage, except fair housing, or infrastructure. they're just not gonna let it apply to those things, except of course the
There are more and more
pipeline.
people debunking that though, I hear that all the
Oh, yeah.
time, this trickle down thing, that, the upper end, that, they're not the ones who hire, I hear that on NPR and all these
Sure,
places.
but NPR is,
But
in our
you feel
corner.
like that doesn't get across to the American people?
Exactly, that's the problem.
Well,
But to the people in Congress.
Well, the
Well,
problem
people in
is
Congress
if
are-
you believe something, even if someone gives you the facts that disproves your belief, that actually reinforces your belief. You don't, people don't say, oh, I was wrong. They become more entrenched in their belief. And obviously this is what, why we have had trickle-down economics for so long, this whole crazy idea, for so long.
I owned a business, North Carolina gave me, what was the number? Something like $800 back a year. It was a special deal for 2 years. No, it's $4,000. I got a tax cut from North Carolina.
When they gave you the 50,000,
Yeah, and I was times 7%, 3,500. So they gave me $3,500 back a year. Like I was going to take that $3,500. I mean, I'm $3,500 to the better every year for 2 years. But how many did I take that 35? I mean, can I hire a person for $3,500?
No, it's
Am I going to go buy a machine? I mean, what am I going to do with $3,500? I'm going to use it whatever I want to use it for. It's probably going to go in the bank, because if I make an extra $50,000 to use that, I've got other money to pay for my food and pay for my house and all that. So it's just extra money to me. And at the same time, it costs, to do that, we raise the sales tax, which costs people at the very bottom about $400 a year. So the average person making $10,000 paid an extra $400. 10 people paid an extra sales tax, so I could get $3,500. I thought that was nuts. I wrote about that.
it's just gone now, right?
That's gone, yeah.
Can I ask you, with gas prices as low as they are now, and I don't know how long it's been since they've raised the federal gas tax, with so many problems that we've got with infrastructure, bridges and roads and stuff like that, wouldn't now be the ideal time to raise the gas tax?
Of course. I mean, Clinton tried to do that in '92, if you recall, the so-called BTU tax. And at that time, the Senate had 55 Democratic votes, 45 Republican votes. He lost 5 Democrats because it was going to have the effect of raising gas prices a dime, 10 cents back then. And he had to break Bob Kerry's arm, senator from Nebraska, to get him the 50th vote so that Al Gore could break the 50-50 tie. Congressman Mizinski from Philadelphia, whose son married Chelsea Clinton, cast the vote to pass it in the House of Representatives because about 25 Democrats peeled off in the House of Representatives, knowing that it was going to cost a re-election in 1994. So, I mean, that was a pretty courageous vote, but they had to take the gas tax piece out of it, 10 cents a gallon, which we don't know. I mean, you don't feel a dime, and you didn't in '92 either, but they had to peel that off to get Bob Kerry's vote, in 1993. Yes, the logical thing, and the other problem with the gas tax, of course, is cars, instead of getting 15 miles a gallon, are now getting 30 miles a gallon, so you're collecting half the tax for twice the use on the roads. That's another problem.
And you may disagree with this, but I would agree when I read that President Obama's approval rating went up 9 points in just the last 2 months. And at the same time, in George W's presidency, he was down around 37% instead of 50% like Obama is now. I think a lot of it's got to do with the price of gas.
No, but the difference is that Obama's done a great job, but the Republicans have painted badly. Bush did a bad job. I mean, there's a real difference there. I mean, he put us in 2 wars, of choice. The United States is not supposed to go into wars of choice. He caused these huge budget deficits. The banks crashed. And, I mean, there were some black marks in his record. I mean, you can't find those on Obama's record, other than the fact he's not the friendliest guy in the world, with Congress. he doesn't drink beer with them enough. Before we get too bored, I just want to reflect on 2016 for a minute. This is going to be a crazy election. The parties are flipped. The Republicans have this, you can go back 100 years. They have a hierarchy. You got to work your way up through, to become the nominee. Nixon was the vice president. Reagan ran against Ford, lost, won. Romney ran against McCain, lost against Bush, then won. Romney lost to McCain, then won. They always have somebody that comes through the ranks. They've got this enormous field. They're liable to pick somebody kind of out of nowhere. Democrats have this way of always picking somebody who's new and different that we've never heard of. John Kennedy, who was he? You go back to Roosevelt, he was sort of tried and true, but you take Kennedy, Jimmy Carter had a 1% name recognition the day he announced. Bill Clinton, Barack Obama. Yeah, he was picked out of a hat because he didn't like the other guy and didn't even know he had an atomic bomb sitting there. And 1 month, less than a month after he becomes vice president, he's going to make a decision on dropping new technology. So it's kind of flipped because the Democrats have kind of anointed Hillary, and I think that might be a mistake because I think the Democrats really need a good debate this time. I think the biggest mistake the Democrats have made, personally, is putting Pelosi and Reid back in, as their leaders in the Congress. They need new blood. They need a new face. Football teams get new coaches when you have bad years. Basketball coaches do the same thing. But to put the same people back there America likes new and fresh. I think the key issue in 2016 is a really quiet one that nobody's listening to, which is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is almost 82. Antonin Kennedy and Scalia are both going to be 79, and Stephen Breyer 77, going to be 77. You got 4 Supreme Court justices that could very easily in the next 6 years have to change. They're going to do everything. The 2 Democrats, Breyer and Ginsburg, can do everything they can. They've asked Ginsburg to step down. She's 82. She's had cancer. She won't do it. She says it doesn't matter. Sandra Day O'Connor quit in anticipation of George W. Bush appointing somebody, quote, right to replace her. George Bush appointing somebody right to replace her because she was worried Al Gore was going to win the election. And so she quit. And then we got, somebody she doesn't like. She said she made a mistake. She shouldn't have quit when she quit. But very likely whoever's elected in 2016 is going to appoint 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices, and that's going to change the shape of America through most of your life. I think that's the biggest mistake the Democrats have made, and nobody's paying attention to the Supreme Court. And I think Pelosi and Reid, they did a good job while they were there, but they just lost.
Other people need to come to the fore. There are no other